Hello there, my name is Jacob Lick. This is for Professor Woodward's Introductory Sociology class, 620-100 I believe. And I want to talk a little bit about sociological theories of prejudice and racism from a few different perspectives. And I'm using the sociologyguide.com as well as sociology.about.com for a little guidance. So if you go to sociologyguide.com, you can look up the sociological theories of prejudice and racism. They talk about the functionalist theory, the symbolic interaction theory, and the conflict theory, or the conflict perspective, as far as the different ways of looking at it. And so I'm going to read you a little bit and then kind of go into what I think. The functionalist theory argues that for race and ethnic relations to be functional and thus contribute to the harmonious conduct and stability of society, racial and ethnic minorities must assimilate into that society. Assimilation is a process by which a minority becomes socially, economically, and culturally absorbed within the dominant society. So that kind of touches on a little bit as far as what, when you kind of bring it together, how it kind of works. And where those sort of differences come from. And then it goes further into mentioning that assimilationism stands in contrast to cultural pluralism, the maintenance and persistence of one's culture, language, mannerisms, practices, art, and so on and so forth. So, switching gears, the symbolic interaction theory addresses a few issues. The role of social interaction in reducing racial and ethnic hostility, and secondly, how race and ethnicity are socially constructed. It then goes further into asking what happens when two people of different racial or ethnic origins come into contact with each other, and how can such interracial and interethnic contact reduce hostility and conflict. And I think that's very interesting as far as that goes, and I'll get back to that in a sec. The basic premise of the conflict theory of things is that class-based conflict is an inherent and fundamental part of social interaction. To that extent, that racial and ethnic conflict is tied to class conflict, and then conflict theorists also argue that class inequality must be reduced to lessen racial and ethnic conflict in society. Now, I think all three of those theories hold a decent amount of weight, but I think ultimately, for me, initially I thought it was kind of a combination of both, or I'm sorry, combination of all three. But I'm starting to lean, as I continue to research this, I'm starting to lean towards the symbolic interaction theory. On top of the fact that, especially in this day and age, when we have the ability to research these things in a matter of seconds, it's becoming interesting to me. I guess I'd actually go further and say fascinating, the fact that racism still exists in our world. And to me, it's a matter of accepting people for their differences, because they're just trying to survive and exist the same way that you are, for the most part. Now, certainly there are folks out there that are actively trying to destroy other people, whether it be racial, religion. It ultimately comes down to a simple difference of opinion, which I think is to broaden it even, it comes down to like when I think about war, it comes down to that it's just a very basic difference of opinion that starts as a discussion and then escalates into a violent conflict. And so, but what's fascinating to me is why do we have to get to that point? Why do we have to get to such a violent aspect of that when it gets to that point? When ultimately, as I think from a symbolic, just sort of society sort of thought process, we're just trying to make it, and we don't have to destroy each other to do that. And I think ultimately that's why, for me personally, it comes down to just kind of dissecting it a little by little, and for the most part, why is it such a big deal when it comes to folks being different from you? Why can't folks just say, hey, you know what? and maybe this is me being naive, but like, why can't we just simply say, you know what, we don't agree, on what we think happens in our afterlife, and we don't agree, from a standpoint of my country should be doing this versus yours. When there's I believe 7 billion different people, in obviously hundreds of countries, and and building down from that, when and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying let's just talk about it. It's a matter of, that's what's actually rolling back. That's what's so fascinating of this subject as a whole is it's so intertwined. It's not as simple as prejudice and racism. It's not as simple as I'm trying to get the one over on you. It comes down to, ultimately, I think, what's best for the individual and what's best for the group. But then coming back and say, you know what, like, as much as I want to have this for me, maybe we can work something out together. And so that's where I fall in the symbolic interaction theory, and that, and that states, going further, that the contact between equals must be sustained, and short-term contact will not decrease prejudice, which I agree. You need to continue to discuss these issues, and it goes further to say that the participants must agree upon social norms favoring equality, which seems so simple to me. Like, it's a matter of it's not even a matter of agreeing to disagree. It's a matter of, hey, you know what, we're not on the same side in this particular situation, but we don't have to kill each other either. We don't have to hate each other. We don't know each other. It's amazing to me, especially in this election cycle, that we're talking about building a wall to separate us from other people, and then from there, we need to bomb so and so because they're over here and we're over here. And so, I think even when I started this, I was going to maybe talk about prejudice and racism a little more in depth, but it's so much deeper than that, and I think that's what makes this subject so fascinating. So I think, all in all, I think it comes down to continuing to dig deeper and continuing to get better, as a whole, society-wise, and as individuals, and we'll continue to get better. And I think as things move forward, we'll be able to learn from each other and keep moving forward. So, thanks.